Hi, I'm Angela and welcome to my channel Befriend in 10. I've been trying to be a better friend to myself for about 5 years. Before that, I had a pretty tough inner critic, inner taskmaster, and a perfectionist judge, all sort of vying for attention in my head. I was able to shift my attitude towards myself by adopting some of the behaviors that I'm about to describe. And I'm not going to lie, my taskmaster and my inner critic and my judge, they're all still there, but they're not as loud. And they have company now, like my inner friend and my inner nurturer. So what did I do to learn to be a better friend to myself? The first thing I did is I started practicing an attitude of general friendliness towards myself. When I found myself being harsh towards myself, I would pause and take a deep breath and ask, what's another friendlier way to look at this situation? The next thing I did was try to get to know myself a little better. I had a pretty good handle on all of my flaws, but I was pretty much sweeping my strengths under the rug and not giving them their due. And there's a really phenomenal book called Now Discover Your Strengths. And it talks about the fact that we spend a lot of time trying to remediate our weaknesses instead of leaning into our strengths, and how this really isn't a good idea because we are all unique individuals with unique strengths and weaknesses, and society benefits when everyone is nurturing their strengths because you can excel. You could potentially excel if you work on your strengths. Whereas if you are always focusing on your weaknesses, you might bring them up to an acceptable level, but you've lost the opportunity to cultivate some of your strengths. Another thing I did to get to know myself better was I started paying attention to how I felt emotionally and physically as I went through the day. And this gave me really valuable information about how to navigate a day. It's like when you start seeing the patterns of the things that trigger you or make you feel anxious or demoralized, and then the things that make you feel competent and excited, you start having a map of how to navigate your life, really. All the triggers might be rocks in a river, and you know where they are, so you can steer around them. Knowing how to avoid situations that are problematic for you is really powerful. The third thing I did when I started befriending myself was to identify my needs, what I needed, and to try to meet them. For example, when I'm sick now, I will slow down and rest. In the past, I used to think that I still had to push through, like I would still have to bake the cookies for the class party or, drug myself up to get into work. I just devalued my physical health so much and elevated every other commitment. Another example might be if you're lonely, find ways to get connection. And if you're overwhelmed, learn to set boundaries and protect your bandwidth. And again, these things are not concepts that you can implement by flipping a switch. It's going to take practice. The fourth thing I did was learn to accept my humanity, to embrace the idea that I'm not a perfect person, I'm not supposed to be a perfect person, and that the goal is not to get through life without any mistakes. I really love this quote by Marie Forleo, which is, "Win or learn, I never lose." I just think that's a really beautiful way to look at the experience of living. I mean, lessons might be painful. It's not saying that there won't be pain or discomfort, but if you can learn from mistakes and grow from experiences, then that's really valuable. And once you've done that, you can let go of the mistake or the past because you can't really change it. Just extract the lessons and then let it go. The fifth thing I started doing is really leaning into following my curiosity. When we are children, exploring our world and being curious about it is a source of great joy and delight. Our brains are incredible, and by giving our curiosity free rein, our brains might come up with new insights and new connections between all of the things that we're interested in and curious about. I really like that story about Steve Jobs and how he audited a calligraphy class when he was in college, and he didn't tell his parents because he knew that they would think it was pointless. But he was curious about calligraphy, and so he indulged in that curiosity curiosity, and then years later he was able to use that knowledge when he was building the fonts for the Mac. Now I know most of us are not a closeted Steve Jobs, but following our curiosity is going to allow our brains to have more Legos to build things in your mind instead of just having all red bricks. You have a variety of pieces. Plus, following your curiosity without expectation or demanding that you achieve some level, to just give free rein to your curiosity and to explore is really fun. And the sixth thing I started doing when I was learning to be a better friend to myself was to treat myself without guilt, because for many years it was pretty impossible for me to buy myself anything without feeling a sense of guilt, like I should be spending this on my kids, I should be putting this into retirement. Like I just could not enjoy the things that I bought for myself. So learning to let go of that guilt was a huge step. Another piece of this was making sure that when I did treat myself, I was not being influenced by outside sources like well-meaning friends who are like, oh, you definitely should buy this, or, social media or whatever, but that I was buying something that really did feel like a treat to me. So those are my tips for how to become a better friend to yourself. But I find that when you are trying to implement new strategies, it's really helpful to understand the why behind the strategy. Like, why is being a good friend to yourself important? I've got 5 reasons for you. Number 1 is that you deserve it. As a member of the human race, with all of your potential to do good and with all of your unique and individual characteristics, you are worthy and your life matters. You are literally made of stardust and filled with the wonder of the universe. And if you don't believe in your inherent worthiness, at least acknowledge that there are millions and millions of people on this earth who believe that every life matters, including yours. And the second reason to befriend yourself is that you will be able to love others better. I remember when I first heard this quote by Brene Brown, where she said, "You can't love other people more than you love yourself." And I just sort of rolled my eyes and I just thought she was crazy. I was like, I can't listen to this woman. She doesn't know what she's talking about, because I love my children with all of my heart and soul. But then in later years, I realized that what she's talking about is that if you don't love yourself, that comes out in how you love others, because your lack of self-worth may give you trust issues in relationships, or your fear of rejection may change some of your parenting decisions because you don't want your children to get hurt. And the third reason to befriend yourself is that it actually facilitates change and growth. It is so much harder to grow when you think you suck. I forget who said this, but I also have this other quote in my head about when I accept myself exactly as I am, then I can change. And that is so true. When you move through life with yourself as a friend, you are able to encourage yourself and you have more grit and persistence. Whereas if you're an enemy to yourself, you sort of walk around with this weight on your shoulder and in your head that just slows you down and makes everything more difficult. So even though I think befriending yourself shouldn't really be about productivity, that is definitely a side effect. And the fourth reason to be a good friend to yourself is that it makes life better. Life is full of ups and downs, and when you're a friend to yourself, you feel more excited and celebratory about the ups. You appreciate them and they sink in more, and then you're able to encourage and comfort yourself through the downs. And when you're at war with yourself, the opposite thing happens. You dismiss your ups. Brene Brown calls it foreboding joy, where you just don't really appreciate all the good things because you have this sense of it ending or that you didn't deserve it. And then the downs are so much worse because you're beating yourself up for them. Finally, it just makes sense. This is your life. It's my life. I mean, who wants to go through life at war with themselves? I mean, we are with ourselves every single day, and having a better relationship with ourselves is pretty much the only thing that makes sense, because we can't divorce ourselves. We're stuck. Learning to be kind and compassionate towards ourselves is really the only thing that makes sense. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. I'll see you in the next video.